Monday Night Raw is nearly upon us, and as we head into that, let's talk about some of the big wrestling news at the moment. We've spoken at length about Tommaso Ciampa's move for Raw. That's just been shall we say, shared by PW Insider, that report that came out just now. We spoke about that last week, but there's plenty more news going on, and one I definitely want to talk about is Jon Moxley, formerly known as Dean Ambrose. Now, this has come to light over in the last few weeks, the fact that Jon Moxley's contract with AEW is due to expire and a new contract has not apparently been signed as of yet. This is not particular news for regulars here. You'll all be aware that a whole lot of people who were signed early on in AEW have had their contracts either revoked, not renewed, or simply there's no interest from AEW in bringing them back in. We spoke at length on Thursday, that is last Thursday, on the AEW financial status video about the privileged position that Jon Moxley has in AEW. He is the only person earning that $6 million bracket. That is apparently at least twice as much as CM Punk is earning, and CM Punk was a coup and a half. So there's a lot going on in the wonderful world of Jon Moxley. With only a month or so to go on his contract, the WWE are certainly considering making a run straight at this guy to get hold of Jon Moxley, to take him by the scruff of the neck if they need be, and just get him back into the club, back home again. The WWE have major interest, not necessarily in a return for Dean Ambrose, but in Jon Moxley roaming the halls of the WWE. There is a hope that they can make this deal happen. However, no official bid has been made because they would have to wait for his contract to officially expire before they are able to do so. Why Dean Ambrose, or Jon Moxley as he's in AEW, has gotten to this point where his contract has not yet been signed? That's a good question. Does relate quite heavily to the AEW financial records and report that we were able to put together as best we could on Thursday. And that is that a lot of different wrestlers at the moment are not having their contracts renewed because of budget cuts. Jon Moxley earns the most of anyone in AEW. When he was first signed, they went hell for leather for this man, and it paid off. It absolutely paid off because Jon Moxley led the field for years. Literally 4 years. Since the day he walked in, Jon Moxley has been the top of the top. It was a choice and it paid off. Welcome everyone to the Tom Collihew YouTube and Twitch channels, where today we're going to talk the possibility of Jon Moxley arriving in WWE and not signing a new contract in AEW. We will also definitely be talking about the possibilities of him signing a new contract in AEW because I want this to be fair and balanced. This won't be entirely exclusive news, just to be clear. Some of this will be speculation on my part, but I'll try to keep it as factual as possible as well. We will also be talking about some other news. For example, as I mentioned at the top of the show there, a week ago at least, we were talking about Tommaso Ciampa being a full-time member of the Raw roster. Well, it was reported today by PW Insider that Tommaso Ciampa is a full-time member of the Raw roster. So, that's the big news that all the different websites are going to be running over the next hour or so. I hope you're all looking forward to finding out that news for the first time. Hope you're all excited for it. Because if I tried to celebrate it, I'd just have a lot of people jumping down my neck about it. So please, if you haven't already, click like on the YouTube video, subscribe if you haven't, and remember to hit follow on Twitch if you've not done so as well. I want to say hi to everyone who's already joined us. I'm going to start running through your questions and chats now and see where we are. Steve at the SCW Wrestling channel opens the show by saying, if Jon Moxley did return to WWE, do you think we would get the Shield triple threat one more time, but this time at its rightful destination as a main event at WrestleMania? To be blunt, yes, I think that is exactly what we would get. I think the WWE would be very eager to do another Shield triple threat, and I also think the WWE would be very eager to do a Shield reunion with Jon Moxley replacing the whole Dean Ambrose character, because I've got to say, this particular Shield may be the strongest that the Shield could possibly be. I'd be very hyped for it, is all I'll say. Steve says, Jon Moxley or Dean Ambrose? Which do you prefer and why? First and foremost, I'm not all that anti Dean Ambrose. I'm really not. I enjoyed some of his wrestling matches. I thought the character was a bit goofy, and I didn't hate it. Then, of course, I discovered Jon Moxley and realised what he could have been. I suddenly wasn't a fan of Dean Ambrose anymore. Tommy B says, I also think at some point Y2J and Bryan will be back in WWE. I agree with both of them. I expect both of them to, at some point, wrestle in WWE again. I just don't think it will be long term at this point. Ed is here. Hello, Ed. Giving us a whole load of the available emotes for channel members at the moment. They are, of course, the same emotes that we have on Twitch for subscribers there. So if you subscribe on Twitch, or if you are a channel member on YouTube, you have access to some exclusive emotes, which are two of my face, one of Shane, and one of Vince. I do need to work on some better ones, to be blunt. But that's something, as I'm now making money on YouTube and Twitch, I can afford. Andrew Quinn says, hello, Tom. Have you had a great day? Also looking forward to Raw tonight. I've had an okay day. I've had an alright day. Had a bit of a spat on the Discord, apparently. I wasn't privy to the fact that I was in a bit of an argument, but apparently I was in a bit of an argument. We will not see much of BFG podcast around these parts anymore. He has opted not to stick around on these channels. I'm not entirely sure of the reasoning, but from what he explained, he did not agree with the factual analysis of the AEW financials and decided to leave, which, fair enough, if that's your choice. You can try and disagree with the facts if you would like to. Matthew Ham says, hello, Tom. Hello, Matthew. How are you? Ed says, which would you consider to have been the most successful of the two Jon Moxley AEW of the two? Jon Moxley's AEW run or Dean Ambrose's WWE run? Now, Dean Ambrose was very successful. He was a WWE champion. He had great matches with Seth Rollins, with AJ Styles. Not a great match with Brock Lesnar, but he still had great matches. And I feel Jon Moxley versus AJ Styles is well worth the revisiting. Jon Moxley versus Dean Ambrose would be well worth the revisiting. Jon Moxley versus Bobby Lashley would be well worth the revisiting. That said, Jon Moxley, for me, tips the scales. Jon Moxley has been the top guy in AEW for a long time. And when he came in, they strapped a rocket to him hard. He made that AEW championship huge. And he's been having great matches and being compelling TV ever since. So for me, it's that Jon Moxley AEW run. Hello, the user says, realistically, do you see Moxley returning to WWE? Yes, I'm being realistic when I say that Jon Moxley could return to WWE, but there is a lot of things at play here. Now, first and foremost, if AEW choose not to renew I'm going to get confused here. If AEW choose not to renew Jon Moxley's contract, then Jon Moxley is going to look for work somewhere, and I guarantee you, much like Cody Rhodes, the WWE would throw every penny that they have at Jon Moxley. Every single penny that they have would go straight in Jon Moxley's direction. Every promise for championships, for storylines, would go in Jon Moxley's direction. I think it's certainly possible that he decides to sign on that dotted line at that time. Austin says, when does his contract expire? If there has been no renewal, his contract will expire next month, so within about 3 weeks. Ed says, the dreaded budget cuts words. Oh no, I know, right? Nick Khan, how dare you? Tony Khan! Andrew Quinn says, I would love Jon Moxley to return to WWE with his Wild Thing theme. Also, I actually remember the goosebump moment, Moxley making his AEW debut at Double or Nothing in Las Vegas. Indeed, the bridge has not been burned, even though Jon Moxley did upset a lot of people with the way he left WWE. He made promises and assurances to the WWE as to what he was doing next, and made it clear that he would not be signing for any competition, and he immediately signed for the competition. So a lot of people were upset, but if there is a chance to get him back into the fold, that will all be forgotten. Tiger Claw says, I can't imagine a world where Moxley goes back to Vince unless he is as unhappy as I am with his random placements since losing the world title. Jon Moxley is not at all unhappy with his AEW run, but he does. If he hasn't signed a new contract yet, there'll be a reason for it. Pardon me. Sean says, hello, Tom. Hello, Sean. How are you? Simon says, hey, Tom. Looking forward to Raw tonight, especially Sasha. Her women's tag team title championship defense against Liv and Rhea. Indeed, the whole show is being built around that match and Cody Rhodes versus The Miz. And to be fair, Raw going forwards is going to be built around Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. They are the 3 top level stars that the WWE will be pushing for Monday Night Raw. Edward Brooks, welcome, says, hey Tom, sad Bayley fan here for the listen. Bayley is not far from the return, Edward, I can promise you that. It is very close to the moment when Bayley makes her triumphant return, and I'm confident that we're going to hear some real big cheers for her. Matthew Ham says, any updates on WrestleMania Backlash? Nothing official as of yet. Now, what I do want to say, what I want to take the opportunity to say right now, is that I did release the video that we recorded on yesterday's spoiler warning. So I'm going to link that in the chat. I will post it on both the Twitch and the YouTube, and just make it so that you can easily find that if you haven't already right after the show. I'm going to be completely blunt and say that every like helps, and so far it has not had many. So every like helps. So far it has not had many. So if you're able to check that out, please do so. I'm going to grab the link now and just post that in both the Twitch and of course the YouTube as well. In fact, what I'll do is I'll pin that to the top of the chat so that you guys can go and look at it at the end. Pardon me. Bailey says, WWE owns the Dean Ambrose name and it's unlikely he sells Jon Moxley to them even if he gets hired. True, he will not be selling the name under any circumstances. I'm confident of that. The WWE would not be asking him to because they want him over the line. Simon says, very excited for Moxley's possible return back home to the WWE in a possible Shield reunion, possible new matches against Priest, Ciampa, for example. There is a lot of brand new matches for Jon Moxley should he return to the WWE fold. Now, I don't necessarily believe that that's going to happen anytime soon, and it's certainly possible that he signs a new deal with AEW, but at least at the moment, it's hard to say exactly what is going to happen. Sean says, WrestleMania 38 beat the Super Bowl on all social media metrics. It did indeed, and the WWE have released a massive press release praising themselves for that, which naturally all of the different wrestling journalist sites have jumped on because it's newsworthy. It absolutely is newsworthy, and it's in the public interest to see just how successful they are. The WWE, by the way, very, very successful, is a lesson that we're supposed to be focused on today. Justin says, I already see people saying WWE has to get AEW talent to make headlines. Are we going to pretend Tony Khan calls everyone who gets released from WWE and signs them? Well, it's a difficult one. It really is. Because it's the most silly thing. It is the most silly thing. People now, wrestlers on both sides of that aisle, can go wherever they want. And that is a fantastic piece of news. That's well worth the sharing. That is a fact that will live on and that we should all be very, very happy about. It's not a bad thing that AEW wrestlers go to WWE. It's not a bad thing that WWE wrestlers go to AEW. All of this is very good news. Also, welcome, Justin. Hey, KJ, what's up with you as well? Simon says, Tommy just accidentally said Jon Moxley versus Dean Ambrose. Did I? Sounds like me. Rob says, this is a topic I've been waiting for. I hope so, because this is less news heavy and more, speculation heavy, as it were. I don't know details as regards Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, but I do know that the WWE are more interested in Jon Moxley than in Dean Ambrose. So I always like to share little tidbits of information like that when they come about. Also, as I did mention at the top of the show, thank you to PW Insider for today confirming our report from over a week ago that Tommaso Ciampa had moved full-time to the Raw roster and would be debuting soon. Simon says, Bayley Asuka return tonight. Still in the plans, both cleared. They're just waiting for a storyline to be ready for them. I expect them both very soon. Simon says, surely he can't walk out in the Blackpool Fight Combat Club. I mean, he can. If he's not under contract, he will. Michael says, hi Tom, welcome Michael. And Sean says, AJ versus Damien was announced for Raw yesterday. As KJ mentioned a little later, it was announced last Monday, so it's in the process of being made. Rob says, I don't see TK to match the original $6 million a year, nor would I expect TK to offer that. And obviously there's big money and attractions waiting in WWE for Mox to return. Absolutely. And that is the big deal here. The big question mark is around that $6 million figure. We know that figure as a fact. That is definitely the case. Nobody is earning close to that in AEW. None of the new signings are earning close to that. And if Cody Rhodes left because he wasn't offered enough money, then they have to bring down that number for Jon Moxley. They've just spent at least $20 million on Ring of Honor. They've just signed Samoa Joe and so many more people. AEW are spending a lot of money right now. A lot of money. Tiger Claw says Raw will actually be tolerable being built around Cody Bex. Indeed. Absolutely. Raw's been good since draft, I feel. SmackDown is on the way back, but it's not quite back yet for me personally, but it is struggling so far. If you're just joining us, or if you've been watching for a while and haven't done so yet, please do remember to hit that thumbs up. That little like button can make a massive difference to the growth of our channel. And if I check, I believe we've actually dropped down a little further, and we're now at 1,071 subscribers. 1,071 subscribers. So, going to be blunt, we are heading in the wrong direction. Heading in the wrong direction. So if you've not yet subscribed, please do so. And if you've not yet hit like, please do so as well. And also, if you haven't yet shared the announcement tweet on Twitter that this show is taking place, please consider doing so as well. It is my latest tweet. I'm just about to retweet it myself so that anyone who missed it is able to see so. Dimitar says, shouldn't Bianca be the focus instead of Becky since she is the champ? Yes and no, they are building Bianca, but the focus will be certain people with recognisable and bankable star power. Notice I said the word bankable. That may be an allusion to someone else. Tiger Claw says, SmackDown on the other hand has massive issues. Roman's booking has absolutely killed that show. A bit of that, yes. There are a few people who haven't been affected, Drew McIntyre, but then you had the absence of Cesaro, Jeff Hardy and the like. And once you start to cut a couple of people out of that SmackDown roster, it starts to look bad. Austin says, I hope SmackDown is good next Friday because I'm going next week in Albany as a birthday present. Great, Austin. Really glad to hear it. I hope you have a great time. Spider Boss, welcome. Says, hi, Tom. Any chance of Rhea Ripley betraying Liv Morgan? Yes. A high chance, I would say. I do believe that Rhea Ripley is going to be the first one to challenge Bianca Belair. What better way to make that happen than with a big heel turn against Rhea Ripley and... No, she's Rhea Ripley. A big heel turn against Liv Morgan and then stepping up to the main event immediately. Sean says, could Sasha turn on Naomi to reunite with Bayley? Possibly, yes. But I do believe we are likely to be in a situation where all three women are going to be on Raw together as faces. So they could just all team up. Spider-Boss says, if somehow Jon Moxley returns to WWE, I want to see him beating Roman. I think Cody's going to be the one beating Roman personally, but let's just say Moxley could certainly beat him for non-championships. Sean says, did you see the report by Peter Insider confirming Tommaso is on Raw and that he's in Detroit for Raw? Yes, I did. Of course, this comes about a week after my report that Tommaso Ciampa had moved full-time to Raw. Once again, that is a victory for Spoiler Warning, and once again, that's a victory for all of you. That's a victory for you, the people who drop in here, who ask questions, who support me, who share the chat, share the show, and who share the news here. The people who come in here and then they're on Twitter saying, Tom Colohue said this first, Tom Colohue reported this first, which I then retweet. It's a victory for all of you. Because over a week ago, at least a week ago, I can't say over a week ago, I don't know that for certain, but I know at least a week ago, we did talk about Tommaso Ciampa being full-time Raw. All of the different websites and outlets are going to run with the Peter Insider report because so many people at the top level have said, hey, you shouldn't listen to Tom Colohue. You should instead look at my paywall where I report the same news that he does, but later. Rob says, only real shame is Blackpool Fight Club is easily the most entertaining part of AEW currently outside of FTR, in my opinion. Obviously wouldn't sell his name, but could easily allow them to use it. Yes, he would absolutely allow them to use it, but it would still be his own personal copyright. The user says, I would want to see Ambrose rather than Moxley just because we see Moxley nearly every week, whereas we haven't seen Ambrose for 3 years. I do believe that if the change does come, it will be Moxley moving to WWE rather than Dean Ambrose returning to WWE. We have seen some suggestions that people are paying a lot of attention to Mox, as it were, at the moment, and I do feel we're going to see a lot more of that going forwards. Spider Boss says, what is the plan for Bianca in the road to Backlash? Haven't heard anything about any plan for Bianca at the moment, so because I haven't heard anything, I'm going to go ahead and say I don't know anything, because I absolutely don't know anything about that. Rob says, Moxley Money in the Bank works for me. That would be fun. That'd be a great time for him to come back as well. KJ says, it's funny to see all the bantering on Twitter about Mox possibly going back to WWE. Some are acting as if they're Moxley's brain and they're scared of losing him just like Cody. It is great fun seeing conversation like this, because people really do react quite strongly to stuff like this. King Xander says, a little confused. You've been saying the 4 horsewomen won't be the focus going forwards, but tonight you said that Becky will be the focus on Raw going forwards, along with Cody and Seth. What about Bianca? Bianca is still being elevated. I understand your confusion. I'm happy to reiterate what I'm saying here. So when it comes to Bianca, she will certainly be a focus. But the WWE do focus, particularly in draw segments and the like, on established stars and established big names. Becky and Charlotte, even though they are unlikely to be champions for quite a while, will still be focal points. Also, I did say the 4 horsewomen are not going to be the focus going forwards. Their focus will be limited. It's not a case that all 4 of them will be away entirely. That's not the case. It's that all 4 of them won't be pushed at the same time. It won't be only the 4 horsewomen who get the push. We will see more sustained time behind Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler, Alexa Bliss, and the like going forwards. And the 4 horsewomen will not be the be-all and end-all of the championship picture. That's what I'm meaning. It won't be that they'll stop pushing the fact that they exist. No, in no way. They're still there to sell t-shirts. However, it is what it is, and the 4 horsewomen will be taking a bit of a step back in a back seat. Justin says, WWE had Rollins say Mox during his feud with Roman, so I guess that could have been planting the seeds. It genuinely could have been. I felt at the time that it was off the cuff and just Seth Rollins being Seth Rollins, but also it's very, very possible that that was just a suggestion by the WWE so that Moxley would hear it, and basically it's a suggestion that, hey, if you talk to us, we might let you be a bit more of what you were. Simon says, heard anything about Becky's possible summertime off? Haven't heard a thing about that, tell you that. Spider Boss says, Sean Ross Sapp told the WWE plan Bayley join forces with Becky. He did not say that. He absolutely did not say that. And Spider Boss, if you go to the man himself or go to his website, you will find no evidence that he said that. No evidence whatsoever. Because he didn't. Someone is just using his name to try and sow whatever the hell they want. Edward Brooks says, seems like top women coming back could wait till after WrestleMania rematches are done at Backlash, and I agree on that one. For example, Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey is a rematch, as it were, from WrestleMania, and I think in that regard we could wait for a couple more women to really make the impact on SmackDown. Raquel Rodriguez, for example, Lacey Evans. That's why we'll get some backstage stuff, some vignettes, or people just not mentioned for a little while. Rob says, I've always been of the mind that Mox can always go back for what is an obvious big money run for WWE, and still several years from now return back to the indies for a modern age Terry Funk send-off. Well, with the way the guy treats his body, that's certainly a strong possibility. This is a man who loves carnage. James Stewart says, hi Tom, who deserves a lot more backstage credit than they get? Obvious the stars of the show perform, but knitting together of it all other than Vince and his immediate circle. There are a number of people who do deserve more credit backstage. I'm looking at TJ Wilson, certainly. I'm looking at Natalia, who's done a lot of work training this generation. And I also think someone like Finn Balor deserves a lot more credit backstage. He's a real positive backstage, and everyone in the locker room absolutely loves that guy. Sean says, where would Moxley end up on USA, or would Fox want him? No idea. We don't know for certain in any way, shape or form that there'd even be a contract on offer. Both sides would want him, though. He's a big star. Spider Boss, I like to hint at things sometimes. It doesn't really help if everyone's asking for clarification on my hints. You know what I mean. You 100% know what I mean. Andrew Quinn says, I think if Mox does return, I feel like they will have his return ready for SummerSlam if AEW doesn't renew his contract. Yeah, I think that would be a good time to do it. If his contract is not renewed, it will expire next month. So I do think Money in the Bank might be an even better shout. Just have do the AEW thing, have a mystery opponent for the Money in the Bank match itself, and have Jon Moxley jump in and throw people into ladders. JJ says, will Becky return tonight and set up her rematch for Backlash? A fan posted a photo and she is in Detroit. Have we verified the fan photo? Is she definitely in Detroit? Also, is she in Detroit just to see people, or is she in Detroit to essentially look after said child while Seth Rollins is doing his thing? It's hard to say. It's not that easy to be able to say one way or the other what's going on at the moment with Becky Lynch. I don't know if she'll return tonight. I hadn't heard anything about an actual break. I didn't expect there would be a break, but Bianca Belair certainly alluded to it. Wiggly, hello mate. Says Hikaru Shida is the best thing about AEW, full stop. I remember when you asked the question about where is Shida? We haven't seen her forever. Has she left? And then that night she returned. You made that happen, mate. Dante, welcome. Says, hey Tom. I totally agreed with you about Cody Rhodes possibly beating Roman Reigns. I can see that happening. Me too. I definitely think there's a lot of momentum behind that. Sean says, this was from Wrestling Headlines. WWE considered Kevin Owens versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 32. Firstly, I appreciate the sourcing. Secondly, I do not trust Wrestling Headlines. Jay Quick says, is this the night Rhea turns on Liv? Probably yes. Kings Andy says, don't watch AEW and was never an Ambrose fan, so I have no idea of what to expect. Then again, I had the same feeling about Cody, and then he had a banger versus Seth. Jon Moxley basically is that Attitude Era throwback. He is hardcore. He's a bit Minoru Suzuki. I don't know if you watch New Japan per se. He's a bit Minoru Suzuki. He's just a full-on bruiser. Moxley versus Volta. I'm tweeting that right now. I'm tweeting that right now. Just as a general concept. Just because it's Moxley versus Volta. That's it. That's all I want to say, because anyway. Austin says this is going to be the beginning of AEW stars leaving like Cody. Yet there is undoubtedly going to be, and there always was eventually going to be, a bit more of an open door between AEW and WWE, with WWE stars going to AEW, as already many have, and AEW stars going to WWE. Part of the budget cuts that the WWE underwent was with the eye of, if a big star comes up, we need enough money to throw at them. Cody then eventually did. Rob says, agreed 100%. Dean Ambrose moniker would get the same look in negotiations from Jonathan Good as Stardust would have got from Cody if brought up. Absolutely. I don't believe that Jon Moxley, even if he wanted to join, would have joined as Dean Ambrose. Much like Cody, if he was told, yeah, we're going to bring you back as Stardust, will have basically said, no, 1,000 times no. Omega, welcome. Says, thoughts on Shinjiro Otani. I do not know Shinjiro Otani. I'm not familiar with the name, so at the moment, I have no thoughts on the matter. Also, Tom Collihue, welcome Omega, how you doing, mate? Rob says, I don't see Wild Thing being used though, but Moxie's original AEW music will do just fine. I get the feeling they would try and license Wild Thing, it's not that expensive after all. The user says, did all of the big name AEW originals re-sign? No, Cody did not. KJ says, also will Khan pay Mox 6 to 8 million next month to be in a tag team? Like maybe Khan didn't want to pay Cody 3 million to be a mid-carder who'll put over every new signing. I don't know. I genuinely don't know how much Tony Khan is willing to pay Jon Moxley, but I feel if he was willing to pay him 6 to 8 million to be in a tag team, he would have already signed a new contract. Spider-Boss says, any chance of Bianca versus Becky rematch on Backlash? Yeah. Definitely a possibility. We'll need to find out if Becky Lynch is actually taking a break, taking that sabbatical or not, before I can answer that question. Wiggly says, so I thought that the whole Lacey Evans being a babyface is going to be a swerve and she'll come out as still a villain. That is not the plan at the moment. Also says, I miss Asuka. Me too, mate. She was different. The user says, how could WWE debut Moxley in terms of which pay-per-view, etc. if his contract expires of AEW and if he signs a new deal with the WWE? I would imagine he'll be ready in time for Hell in a Cell. He'll be ready in time for Money in the Bank. So personally, I'd go Money in the Bank. But it really depends what the plan is for Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Moxley at the moment should go to SmackDown because they need people on SmackDown. Also, that's where you have Drew McIntyre, that's where you have Volta, that's where you have Roman Reigns. Bailey says, does the influx in call-ups over the last 2 weeks almost foretell cuts coming soon at the bottom of the rosters? No, it does not foretell that. The rosters until those call-ups were simply not big enough because after the releases several people chose to leave as well. Rob says Dana and Tamina handling strength and condition classes for NXT prospects is underrated as well. I do agree with that. Things like these really need to be publicised more by WWE and by the wrestlers themselves. King's Andy says, I think someone like Sasha deserves credit backstage. People like Natty, Naomi and Bailey always sing her praises about how she tries to always elevate the roster. That is her getting credit backstage, just to be clear on that one. I don't see many people singing the praises of Natalya, despite the fact that Natalya is constantly taking part in the training and is working with literally every woman who comes through. I see a lot of people giving credit to Sasha Banks, though. Sonic says, hello Tom, how are you doing? Doing very well, thank you Sonic, welcome to the show. Ed says, who is this Volta that you speak of? I know about a Gunter. It's a sad moment. It's a sad moment when that's not even a joke, that's actual fact. We don't have a Volta, we have a Gunter. If you're currently watching on Twitch, please do consider hitting the follow button. It means you'll get a notification every time we go live with spoiler warning. And if you're currently watching on YouTube, please consider hitting the like button. We currently have 25 viewers, but only 15 likes. So every like makes a difference, boosts our potential viewership and helps us grow. So I'd be very grateful for that. At the same time, if you've not yet clicked subscribe, please consider doing that one as well. We have actually dropped a little bit further down in subscriptions than we were previously. We're at 1,071. Previously we got up to 1,073, but we have dropped down a little bit further. Honestly, at this point, I'm not sure what we can do about it. I'm just hoping we can do something. Spider-Boss says, I believe this whole Lacey Evans babyface run will turn into Lacey Evans turning heel. Okay, no one personally thinks that. Interesting. I'm very glad to see King's Andy Simon. I'm very glad to see both of you having a brief conversation there with each other. Just sort of positive reinforcement for each other, patting each other on the back for having just great arguments that you both agree with. I like that. That's great stuff. Please do continue doing that. Wiggly says, maybe I have some cosmic mystical powers. I say Hikaru Shida and she appears. Well, like Beetlejuice. It's a way of doing things. Rob says, any more news on Curtis Axel's agent tryout? Was the match between Sasha Banks and Liv Morgan good? Because if he thought it was, chances are Curtis Axel is going to be a road agent. KJ says, Moxley versus Volta. I thought Volta retired. I don't believe he retired. I do believe he left the WWE. So maybe it's better off if AEW sign him so that they can get the match, pardon me, before Moxley leaves. If he leaves. Michael says, per Tom Collihue, Jon Moxley is returning to WWE. Here's the thing. You made that joke, and it's funny. But here's the thing. How many different people have tried to discredit me? How many times have you seen in my replies on Twitter, or in fact, Michael, perfect example, people have literally tweeted at you stating that I'm a liar. So people who say that, knowing full well that it isn't true, because how many times have I proved that wrong, they would probably run with that headline to try and encourage people never to listen to me, never to come onto this site, so that if I do report something and it explodes and becomes viral and it's massive, literally massive, people won't care. They've succeeded. They've gotten to the point where people don't come onto these shows to look for news because they've been told, oh, he's never said anything that's right, despite the fact that I've hours upon hours of correct reports on this YouTube, on this Twitch. Hours upon hours of correct information. So people would probably run with that because they dicks. Justin says, I don't think WWE keeps Moxley's music though. I think they would pay for Wild Thing. That or agree something new with him. Rob says, Mox versus Volta. Tommy just did something for me that only a very special group of people in my life ever have. I don't want to know the details, especially if it involves a wet patch. KJ says, I don't think any more big names from WWE will go to AEW, guys like Bryan and Cole. I feel maybe Finn is possible, but we'll see. The saddest part of that is the absolute acceptance that all of us have that Finn's not a big name anymore. He just isn't. Kings Andy says, are there any plans for an all-women's pay-per-view or maybe another Mae Young Classic? No plans at the moment. No plans whatsoever. So when it comes to the plans for all-women's pay-per-view, Evolution did briefly have an Evolution 2.0 in the works, but that was wrapped up pretty succinctly shortly afterwards because women were then able to wrestle in Saudi Arabia. We are joined by a legit journalist of the highest regard. For anyone who doesn't know, Darren Paltrowitz is a very talented man I worked with briefly at Sportskeeda, who interviews some big names about really interesting stuff. The Paltrowcast has joined, says, interesting scoop, Tom, thanks. And immediately starts taking the piss. Wonderful. Hello, Paltrow. How you doing, mate? I hope you're well. Been a little while. KJ says, I'd think Money in the Bank and SummerSlam would be the best places for Mox to debut. I would say so. If Moxley did leave AEW, as we know, the reports are that his contract expires next month. We haven't heard any reports about a new contract. Money in the Bank for me would be a perfect time to do it. Just as a concept, as Money in the Bank, it works perfectly for me. Hector says, if Mox does leave, at least they have a fallback with Wheater Yuta being Bryan Danielson's potential new partner, so that faction wouldn't just cease to exist, which is good. That may be why they're doing it, to be blunt. Spider-Boss says, I would love to see Moxley returning to WWE at Extreme Rules. That's a long way, mate. That's a long way. Spider-Boss says, it's hard to get used to saying Gunter instead of just saying Volta. I know, right? It makes no sense. No sense. I never understood it. Never understood it. Omega says, Otani was the inaugural WCW Cruiserweight Champion, had a great match with Eddie at Starrcade, took a German suplex into the turnbuckle and is currently paralysed. Oh, well then I have no thoughts on that one, to be honest. Sean says, the 5 teams announced for the tag team titles, Pretty Deadly, Grayson and Sanga, Brooks and Jensen, Creed Brothers and Legada. Who wins the vacant NXT tag team titles? I'm going to go with the Creed Brothers. I think I'll go with the Creed Brothers. Can't guarantee it, of course. That's who I think is going with it. Michael says a whole military type character seems like more of a fit than the sassy Southern Belle. The intention with Lacey Evans was always to push her as a face, but what they needed at the time was a heel. She's been a means to an end, unfortunately, for a while. Justin says, why the gimmick change for Lacey Evans? Believe this gimmick is outdated and so 1990. The bland good guy that has a military background will not work. I've been wrong before, though. To be blunt, the bland military guy still works. Because what it means is she will walk out and the crowd have just been told, you can chant USA if you want. Name one American crowd that doesn't love chanting USA. You'll get over just by pointing to the flag. It works. How many flag matches have we seen? The flags matter. They really do. King Xander said, okay, am I the only one who's not bothered by what he's called? Volta or Gunter is still badass, been watching wrestling for too long, seen many wrestlers get name changes. I wouldn't say I'm potentially bothered. I get confused by it and I occasionally make jokes on it. It is mostly in jest, King Xandy. But at the same time, I don't think it's necessary. That's what confuses me. Also says Sasha vs. Liv was good. Curtis Axel did well. Only thing I didn't like was the length of the match. The length of the match was not up to Curtis Axel. He was told, give us a match in this length of time, and he did the best he could. So that's pretty good pluses from at least your side there, King Xander. Spider-Boss says, any chance of seeing a unification tag team championship match between the Usos and RK Bro? Yes. Now, if you watched on Friday, spoiler warning, I did discuss the fact that the WWE simply did not know what they were going to do with the Undisputed Championship. They didn't know yet whether there was going to be a new belt. They didn't know yet whether Roman was going to defend twice per pay-per-view. They didn't know yet whether they're going to have different people win each championship. This was confirmed 2 days later by Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast. Once again, all of the different media outlets ran with Andrew Zarian rather than myself, which was, lovely. But it is what it is. And yeah, at the moment, because they don't know that, they're not sure what to do with tag team championships. Whether it's going to be a full unification, we'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, they're just not sure. Jay Quick says, do you think they will unify the two women's titles? No, not at all. KJ says they should at least do a Raw or SmackDown just for women, like have a women's night. I don't think they need to. I think it works better for everyone if you don't segregate like that, personally. Sometimes it is necessary. The only reason we had Evolution was because Saudi Arabia was segregation. The men and women were completely split apart. Jared says Vince never pays for music, Tom. Jim Cornette implemented that with an actual quote of Vince in his Cody Seth review. Cult of personality, anyone? Paltrow says, oh geez, you're too kind, thanks Tom. Very well deserved, Mr. Paltrow, it's very well deserved. KJ says they have enough full-time star power, plus Asuka, Bliss and Bayley who are out at the moment. That is true, that's absolutely fair. Also says Moxley at Extreme Rules would only be acceptable if Johnny Knoxville books it. So you want Mox versus Knox? You want Mox versus Knox? I need to highlight that. Because I just want everyone to realise that you're asking for Mox versus Knox. Can't be too angry about it. But I just find it funny. Jay Quick says, I would want Mox to walk in at Money in the Bank, look at Roman and Seth, said, what's up, and walks out. Earlier today, I did put up a tweet that I thought really exemplified what I wanted to happen. I would love it to be in the middle of a Seth Rollins-Roman Reigns feud. To have Jon Moxley, music hit, he walks out in the middle of their... literally just interrupts in the middle of their promo, walks out, looks at Seth Rollins and says, so here we can say shit on TV now. As if that's the entire reason he left. Because I think it would be hilarious. Just absolutely hilarious. And if there's one thing I like, it's funny booking. Ed Fries believe Pretty Deadly will be winning the tag team championships. Wiggly says, I do miss Lacey's sassy character. I really hope they don't do a Lacey versus Asuka rivalry and make it out to be a Pearl Harbor revenge type thing. I really hope they don't do that either. You did, Wiggly, you did. KJ says, I'm sure they just paid for Edge and maybe Pat McAfee too, but it was a one thing, so I don't know. They would still have had to pay royalties. A lot of people don't realise that anything like that, you have to pay royalties for the use. So CM Punk's theme, Cult of Personality, they paid through the nose for that, but it was worth it. It was part of CM Punk's new deal at the time. He had Vince over a barrel. He really did. If you've just joined the show, or just haven't done so yet, and you're watching on YouTube, please do consider hitting that little thumbs up. That like button can make a massive difference to the growth of the channel. As you've seen in the rise, we are now at 36 viewers and 20 likes, so it does make a pretty big difference. As well as that, of course, if you're able to, subscribe if you haven't already. Austin says, do we got a Raw watch party tonight? We do not know. The Raw after WrestleMania was going to be the only Raw watch party until the next big pay-per-view, because ultimately I just have a lot of work that I need to do during the day now in order to justify my wages. My salary. I'm not used to that yet. My salary. First salary position. Very happy about it. So I need to not be awake until 4 a.m, basically. If Daylight Savings has stayed forever, then hopefully in future it'll be a 3 a.m. finish, and that makes it a lot more accessible, but for now, not so much. Rob says Mox could easily fit under the pay for music exception, being as he's not exactly an everyday mid-carder. Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Sean says if Moxley does return, they could have him do the return that John Cena did at Money in the Bank last year. Or just sort of walk out when Roman's there. I mean, it could work. It could work. I'd like a little bit more than just sort of walking out and being like... I'd like him to just walk out and beat the ever-living crap out of Roman. That'd be great. That'd be great. Spider Boss says, I wonder why WWE keep looking for plans for Bayley to return, because they didn't know when she would be cleared to return. When she was cleared, that's when they started writing, so it's just a little bit of a late writing curve. The user says, who do you think Seth's next feud will be with? I think he is still going to feud for a little bit longer at least with Cody Rhodes, just to further establish Cody Rhodes to people who haven't watched from 6 years previous. So maybe fans who joined in the last 6 years and still don't quite know who Cody is, or, as much as anything, they want to establish who he was in AEW and who he's going to be now going forwards. This is, after all, a very different man to who he was when he left. Wiggly says, can't imagine Edge with anything other than Metalingus. The Edge intro now is actually fantastic. I really like the theme they've given him. Very Aleister Black. Also says, I remember that time Goldberg's theme was briefly changed to Megadeth's Crush, and it was awful. I do not recall that, and I'm very happy about it. King Zandy says, pretty sure they pay Snoop for Sasha, even though it's an original WWE theme. They do, actually. And that is a very, very, very clever bit of work by Snoop Dogg to make sure he gets paid bank for something that he was already going to do for free anyway. So he gets paid bank for banks. He banks and gets paid. Sorry, he banks bank for banks. Jared says, now watch-alongs until the next pay-per-view. Watch-alongs will be Friday. We still do watch-alongs for SmackDown because, you know, it's the weekend. I'm able to do that. Wiggly, you did mention that. So I'm glad to hear it. And Wiggly says, any updates on the AEW game? Nothing at the moment. Nothing at the moment. It's still very much in development. And the fact that it's still in development is something that I find concerning. The fact that it's taken this long to put together a game, when 2K produced a new game every single year, with the exception of last year, of course, because it was terrible. Maybe that's the reason. Either way, given the amount of money they've sunk into it, I would expect them to be further along. Wiggly says, gosh, 6 years have flown by. They have. A lot's happened. A lot has happened since Cody Rhodes left the WWE. Not much more could have happened, to be fair. Simon says, yes, Snoop absolutely makes a lot of money off the WWE, off of Sasha's theme. Indeed. Wiggly says, did John Cena own the rights to his theme? Kinda yes, kinda no. The WWE have a license to it, but that license will expire at some point. But it is his original music, so technically he does own it, yes. KJ says it'll be cool if Roman won the main event and Money in the Bank, then Seth came after, like Cena did, to tell them that they aren't done. Then Mox comes in, acts cool at first, then beats both of them up and hits Heyman with his finisher. That'd work. That'd absolutely work. I would love that. That'd be absolutely fantastic. I'd also really love it. Really love it. Let me fantasy book for a moment. It's Money in the Bank. No sign of Moxley. No one's heard anything about it. But there is going to be a mystery competitor in the Money in the Bank ladder match. People are speculating. People are wondering. Then we found out that the main event for Money in the Bank is going to be Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins, much as it was many years ago. On the night, Jon Moxley is the mystery competitor. He wins Money in the Bank, and instead of doing what he did previously, where he came out and cashed in on the winner, before the match between Seth and Roman starts, he walks down with his briefcase and says, yeah, we're doing this. We're doing this now. Shield triple threat on his return, after having already competed in the ladder match, won Money in the Bank. That would be incredible for me. I don't even know who I'd have win that, to be completely honest. I may have Seth escape, as it were, with a championship, having pinned Roman. But still, wouldn't that just be great fun? Spider-Boss says, does the winner of Cody versus Seth face Roman for the Undisputed title? Cody Rhodes is not currently connected to Roman for the Undisputed title. That is unlikely to be a number one contendership match. But I do think Cody versus Roman is in our near future, maybe even as soon as SummerSlam. Sean says, I don't see Alexa back until the build-up to Money in the Bank. She has a honeymoon now, and I believe her husband has a concert coming up, so she'll want to be there. I think it'll be a little time yet. Alexa Bliss, the news that I had and the news that I shared was consistent. Alexa Bliss will be back after WrestleMania. She was not supposed to be back for Elimination Chamber, but they needed a body. There was supposed to be a whole thing up until WrestleMania, at which point she would afterwards return. Now we are where we are. She will be returning soon. After WrestleMania is after WrestleMania. Now, I really hope that when it comes to stuff like that, people do pay attention to it. Because I remember quite a while ago, my first Reddit hate thread, which still comes up whenever you Google my name, and is one of the main reasons they got away with muddying my name the way they did. Let me find it. Google. Reddit Tom Colohue. Here we go. Okay, so the thread was started by someone who's already deleted their account. Says the title is "Beware of Tom Colohue from Sportskeeda. He is the new Brad Shepard." Here is their argument. Colohue started the rumour on AJ Styles moving to SmackDown. The story is not true. Colohue worked for Wade Keller but was fired for posting fake scoops on Twitter. He is 76% upvoted with 30 upvotes. Now, let's break this down. Firstly, I still work for Wade Keller. I have a weekly podcast, so I was clearly never fired for posting anything. But even more importantly, this was posted at the January 27th, 2020. January 27th, 2020. In April 2020, AJ Styles moved from Raw to SmackDown. The story was true. So what I've got there is a Reddit hate thread that a lot of people genuinely look at, and it's one of the first things people see if they Google my name. And it's completely a lie. Gonna link it so people can find it. Literally, both points there are provable lies. But the only thing people focus on is that false headline. Wiggly says, surely it's been beyond a year and a bit since development began. Development on what, Wiggly? Development on what? I'm not sure what you mean. The user says, what do you think AEW will promise Moxley so he can stay? Maybe an AEW championship run. I'm not sure what they can follow. If they can't offer money and the AEW championship doesn't get hot potato, that's not something that happened. That's a good thing. I like how they booked the AEW championship so far. I'm not sure then what they can promise Moxley. He's already had a fantastic top-level run. The only way to go is down. Spider Boss says, in your opinion, who is the best woman in the mic in WWE? Alexa Bliss, no contest. It's why I'm a huge fan of Alexa Bliss. She is the best talker the women's division have, in my opinion. Austin says, who do you think Brock will face when he comes back? Any ideas? I'm hoping it'll be some high to medium level heels. So, for example, I think we could get a great match with Brock against Sheamus at SummerSlam, with Fight Night in Sheamus's corner. I also think there's potential for a Brock Lesnar-Baron Corbin match, which could be a lot of fun. I think it will be heels, so we'll see how that goes. Wiggly says, doesn't HBK own his song too? I'm not sure. Wiggly also says, what's Mick Foley's status with WWE? No connection, no contract, no bookings at current. Rob says, I love the triple threat idea. I love the triple threat ladder match at Money in the Bank idea. I just think that'd be a great way to reintroduce him. Just literally walk him in and be like, hi, I'm here to take over, just so you know. Oh, look, I'm taking over. Oh, by the way, I'm here to take over this match too. Oh, look, I've taken over. It'd just be great. Also, it mirrors, of course, what happened with Dean Ambrose and Money in the Bank in the past, but it's slightly different. Kings Andy says, as someone who has worked as a designer in games industry, AW's video game being in developmental hell... Ah, that's it, thank you. That's what you meant, Wiggly. Being in developmental hell is something I've seen many times. Usually happens when the makers are unsure of which engine to use. I have seen a lot of times, for example, a game change from one engine to the Unreal Engine or the other way around, and it just delays everything because you have to start from scratch. It's a fair point, Kings Andy, and I thank you for making it. Austin says, Money in the Bank is going to be in Vegas, in a big venue. I'm thinking they've got big plans. Maybe that's where Moxley comes in, or Brock. Well, they haven't planned anything for Moxley, just to be clear. Jon Moxley is not under contract at the moment with the WWE, not under contract offer either. He is currently still working under an AEW contract. I wouldn't be too surprised if in the next few weeks we hear that Jon Moxley has signed a new deal, for example. Rob says, between now and then I would enjoy a Bloodline versus Nakamura and RK Bro 6-man at Hell in a Cell. Ooh. Would you put that in the cell? Because I've got to be honest, I probably would. Sean says, your thoughts on if CM Punk beats Adam Page for the AEW World title? I know he said he wants to be the world champion before his run with them is over. There's plenty of time yet, and I think Adam Page is still the way forward for AEW. Honestly, I think MJF is more likely to be the next champion. That said, CM Punk is after the top level, and I think he's going to be putting people over high up as well. KJ says, Brock versus Gunther. I still want to see a Brock tag match. We haven't seen one since he came back. Imagine building the hot tag for like 5-6 minutes like they do with Orton. I agree with that. It would be a lot of fun. And to be fair, Brock versus Gunther sounds like a lot of fun. Like a lot of fun. Spider-Boss says, why AEW still having Hangman Page versus Adam Cole? Because it went very well recently. There's a little bit of fan service. And also they just don't have another plan right now. KJ says, when he gets tagged in, he jumps over the ropes. Brock is good at that. He's got a lovely hop on him. Rob says, people like to assume Mox isn't in it for money, but the art aside, what are we doing? You don't pass up on that kind of money that may be on the table and the potential to stir his legacy a bit. Jon Moxley is quoted as saying previously, the only way we see him at WrestleMania is if he gets a boatload of money and some more creative control. Money clearly is part of it. Sean says, possible Moxley may have re-signed and they are keeping it quiet. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. This, to be clear, is a bit of speculation on my part, talking about Jon Moxley. What I do know, what I can say for certain, is that the WWE are interested. But they are more interested in Jon Moxley than the return for Dean Ambrose. Dimitar says, since the Bloodline has gone for all belts, I think it would be cool if at some point Sasha and Naomi join them. I agree, and I'd be very excited for that. Spider-Boss says, how long will continue MJF versus Wardlow until we have a definitive winner? And Simon says, Omega is working very hands-on with the AEW video game in his time off at the moment. Indeed, Kenny's working on a lot of different stuff at the moment. He's keeping himself very, very busy. Now, just before we continue, there is something I quickly need to do. There is a number of things I can do now that I wasn't able to do before because I'm monetized. For example, if I scroll down enough, there is a way to put a redirect on streams. So for example, when I finish my show, we can go straight to a different video. But it has to be a live video. So I have to go from one live to another live. Now I don't have anything planned and queued. But what I will do is just remind everyone that currently pinned at the top of the YouTube chat is a link to a video that I uploaded earlier today. That video is a preview and predictions for the match card for WWE's WrestleMania Backlash. I am asking for people to drop in, watch it all the way if you can, but at least leave a like on the video. It's not doing well for likes so far. It's not doing too well. Because I record them live and they're already on YouTube, people have already seen them, most of the people who are most reliable in helping that have already seen it. So if you're able to, please do check it out and hit like as well. Jeff Samuel says, hey Tom, is Curtis Axel and Daivari coming back to the WWE? I believe they will be doing so, yes. They have been backstage, and Curtis Axel at least passed his test with flying colours. Sean said, why Sasha in the Bloodline? She isn't related to them. Doesn't necessarily have to be related. After all, it could be that she's brought in because Naomi gives them the opportunity for a breakup later, after all. Michael says, everything with Wardlow has been fantastic. I've heard very good things. And the user says, which over names do you see going to WWE from AEW? Jon Moxley at some point. Chris Jericho definitely going back as well. Simon says, I would like that a lot for Sasha. The faction would be absolutely unstoppable. Spider-Boss says, any chance of Moxley and Bryan facing Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus? Yep, there is definitely a chance. After all, they're in the tag division now. Simon said, your thoughts on Mox's Money in the Bank cash-in and Money in the Bank 2016 pay-per-view, and all three Shield guys making history becoming WWE champion on the very same night. I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I wish and hope that we get days like that again in future. It was just a perfectly booked show in that regard. Rob says Brock Volta, Lashley Volta, Mox Volta, McIntyre Volta, Sheamus Volta, Rollins Volta, Cody Volta, AJ Volta, Orton Volta, Riddle Volta, Owens Volta, Sammy Volta, Theory Volta, Balor Volta. And if you are in any way a Volta, then you have lots of options of people to vault there. King's Andy says, why do the women in men's rosters feel so separated now? Back in the day, their stories used to intertwine all the time. Rock, Trish, Lita, Austin, etc. used to interact all the time. The main reason for that was that the WWE didn't believe that women could get over without a man being involved. Nowadays, the women can be a bit more independent, though I definitely do think we should see maybe a few more mixed tag matches. Maybe a few more factions involving male and female. That would work for me. Spider-Boss agrees, says I would love to see Sasha and Naomi as part of the bloodline. Roman and Sasha are money and have in fact teamed before. Dimitar says from what Naomi has said before, her and Sasha is basically as close as sisters, so I think she would fit. And after all, from what Paul Heyman has said before, definitely a possibility that there is interest in Naomi from that group. Jeff says, Tom, what will you do with Sasha Banks and Naomi in your opinion? Who will you put in there with them? Maybe Bianca Belair as a faction? Nope, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Sasha and Bianca should never be in a faction together. Also, I don't think that Bianca needs people for the faction, whereas I think Sasha and Naomi could really benefit from it. What I would do with Sasha and Naomi, as I mentioned previously, is I would have them, they're the tag team champions until Money in the Bank or SummerSlam. Then I'd have them wrestling some exhibition matches, Sasha versus Ronda, Sasha versus Charlotte, etc., until Survivor Series when they work in a team together. And then eventually, leading into WrestleMania, have them involved in some of the big matches there. King's Andy says Sasha in the bloodline means she will never lose, as they never lose, a win for her fans. Some of her fans really do believe that if Sasha ever loses a match, the sky is falling. Sean says, think Ezekiel will have his debut match tonight? I hope so. I think we'll see something between Ezekiel and Elias. Now, I like what I saw of Elias, but I think Owens was a bit disrespectful. Simon says, yeah, like when the Hardy Boys team Extreme were feuding with Steph in the two-man power trip, Austin and Triple H back in May 2001 on Raw. Yeah, so 21 years ago, you're right, things were very different. Spider-Boss says, does Austin Theory need a gimmick for succeed or be Vince's guy is enough? Vince will get Austin over. He has before, but with a different Austin. Jeff says, Sasha versus Rhea at Mania. That would be a lot of fun indeed. We have reached the hour and we have finished our show. We are out of questions and comments. It is 11 p.m. here and I need to get to bed in time for more work tomorrow. So I'm going to say good night to everyone. Please remember to hit like and subscribe if you haven't as well. It makes a big difference to this show and the growth of this channel. We have sort of started to stagnate a little bit and I'd like to do everything we can to stop that from happening. But in the meantime, thank you everyone who has joined me, everyone who is here constantly keeping me company, asking questions, keeping the show going. Thank you everyone for your company as always. I've been Tom Colahue, you've been fantastic, and I'll see you all very soon.